and we are down in Bankhead National Forest, and we're going to check out a grave site down here. It's actually a graveyard, and there's a pretty cool story behind this that really got my interest when I first heard about it, and it kind of prompted me to come down here and check it out. Now, we did try to camp down this way. There is some campsites in the National Forest down here, and let me roll this window up because the truck's kind of loud. And I'll post that video, I think, at one of the corners up here. You guys can check it out. We ended up not staying the night because it was super cold, and my daughter, she couldn't get warm, so we ended up, heading on back to the house. Anyway, we're gonna get up here and find where to pull off for this, and tell you guys a story about it. And I think you're really gonna like it. So. So while these are way better roads than that trip we took up to North Carolina, and they're still pretty sketchy actually in some places, and we're still about 3.2 miles away from the cemetery where we're going. And oh my goodness, it's that rock. Anyway, I'll show you guys a little more if anything pops up, but so this road turns, it goes back that way. So anyway, I'll bring you guys back when we get a little closer, and yeah, we can't really go that fast out here, so. Supposed to be ready to get back here. Yeah. Alright guys, so we got down here and it started raining on us. Fog come in, it got kind of really spooky when we pulled up in here. So anyway, we're at the graveyard, and this graveyard is, you can hear the rain and stuff here at the truck. This is from like the 1800s. So we're gonna get out, hopefully we won't get too soaked, and walk around a little bit and talk to you guys a little bit about some of the stuff I found out. And I did a little digging on this story. So I'm going to walk up the path and look at some of these gravestones real quick. And look at this. 1848 to 1905. Wow. These are old. Some of these are not even marked. They're just headstones. So walk up here a little bit. Oh, this is one of her sons. Henniam Brooks, born 1859, died April 17, 1884. Son of Willis and Jane Bates Brooks. Wow. Kind of peaceful out here, ain't it? So I'm not sure if these little ones are or headstones or not. We'll try to not step on them. There's a couple of them back here near the wood line here. So that one looks fairly new. So the reason we came down here was because of a local legend here, and her name is Jenny. So her real name is Louisa Elizabeth Jane Betts Brooks Johnston. So she was born in Kentucky on January 2nd, 1826 to James and Annie Bates. So at the age of 14, she married Willis Brooks and moved to the Appalachian foothills, which is down here in Lawrence County. So this is part of the, or is now part of the Bankhead National Forest. When she married, she was 14, of course. Who she married, Willis Brooks, was 35 years old at the time, and they had an inn, or a tavern, if you will. And anyway, run this little tavern. Now, alright guys, so I had to get back over here to the truck because it's still raining pretty hard, and my notes that I took down for this is getting soaking wet. So, and the noise in the truck's kind of loud, so I was hoping it wouldn't. Anyway, so like I said, at the age of 14 she married 35-year-old Willis Brooks, moved to the Appalachian foothills in Lawrence County, Alabama. Willis, which was her husband, took to calling his wife Jenny, and the couple ran a successful inn on the heavy traveled Byler Road, which is right over here. And a little story on Byler Road. Byler Road is actually one of the first state roads in Alabama, or actually was the first road in Alabama, first state road. Anyway, they ran this all while raising their 9 children. So she had 10, lost one at birth, and then she had another 9. 5 of them were boys. Of course, they made ends meet by what they made from the inn. And fast forward a little bit, the American Civil War started. So this area has a lot of Civil War history, and so you had the Confederates and the Union soldiers, right? So let's see here. So the folks around here, they called it a rich man's war. They didn't want any part of it. They stayed in these hills down here and tried to avoid any part of the war that they just didn't want anything to do with it. So most of them went about their daily life down here. They decided that they didn't want part of the conflict. They just wanted to live their lives. So By the fall of 1861, the Southern recruitment had fallen sharply. So the Confederate Congress, in order to boost their ranks and their numbers, drew up a draft, or instated a draft, that for all able-bodied men, 18 to 35, were enlisted. There were a few exceptions or exemptions. So the exemptions, for folk down here, it made them dislike the war even more because of how it was drawn up. So at first there were exemptions for war production jobs, civil servant jobs, military officers, clergymen, and teachers with 20 students or more were put into place. So those type of folks were exempt from being drafted or enstating in the war. See that rain hit me right in the face? None of the exemptions fit any of the fit into the daily life of the folk down here. Another exemption was put into place that drafted men could substitute, so they could hire a substitute for somebody to fight in their place. The cost of that was $300, which at the time was, so far out of reach for local folk, it only added to the growing hatred of the situation. And then another exemption was put into place in 1862. Plantation owners with more than 20 slaves were given a pass. And to make matters worse, an impressment order was issued giving the Confederate government, so this is where it gets crazy right here, it gave them the right to take their food, crops, fuel, and land from people who couldn't afford to pay their taxes. The locals here could, they barely sustained a living, and the majority of them didn't own slaves. They were a culture set apart from to themselves. That was it. And all these new exemptions, seem to purposely single out local families to be drafted. These communities quickly became, they became a time bomb. These folks were upset. They didn't want anything to do with what was going on down here. So it was basically a time bomb. That was just something that was waiting to set them off. So then the Confederates formed a group called the Home Guards, and this is something else here. All right, so back to the Home Guards, guys. So they were groups of men unable to serve, whether it be because they were too young, too old, or disabled, or other reasons, of course. Their main job was to basically hunt down draft dodgers and to seize properties and supplies from the poor, which were the folks that couldn't pay their taxes. But eventually, a group of the Home Guards made their way to the Brooks Inn. So this is back to Miss Jenny here. There are a few speculations as to what happened. Some say that so now it's Kinloch Falls now, but it used to be called Hubbard Creek, I believe is what it is. Which was it was a Major David Hubbard that had a summer home down there in a grist mill. And some of the Union soldiers went down there and got into a fight with the Confederates. And instead of burying the Union soldiers, the Confederacy, they decided just to leave them laying there. Just said, "Hey, don't bury them. Leave them laying there to rot." Everybody deserves a proper burial, regardless of what's going on. So one of the speculations was Jenny and her husband buried the Union soldiers, which upset the Confederacy. Another one was that they said that they were Union sympathizers. Others say that the Brooks refused to pay their taxes, or they were hiding their oldest son, which is John, by the way. Their oldest son's name was John. So let's go on here. All right. So they believe they might have been hiding John from the draft, which. But either way, the Home Guards came calling, and the reason for the events that took that place isn't completely known. But whatever happened, it resulted in the troop. So there was 8 Home Guards taking the now 57-year-old Willis, which is Jenny's husband, from the house at gunpoint. It was there where they beat and bound him before hanging him in a tree in their front yard, and in front of the children. And their oldest son, John, who tried to intervene, was also shot. was shot and killed by the home guards. Let's see here. They then turned and shot the dangling body of Mr. Willis. And before they left, the home guards set fire to the Brooks' home. With the home guards gone, Jenny lowered her husband's body and laid him beside her son John. She gathered the rest of her children around, and she had her 5 sons lay their hand on their father's chest, and Jenny made them swear an oath, even 5-year-old Henry, that they would never rest until all 8 killers were dead. So Jenny then set out to teaching her sons how to shoot. She's quoted as saying that she wasted many a keg of powder teaching my boys how to shoot, and she took great pride in it. So the home guard leader was the first to fall to the Brooks, and that was in 1864. Jenny and one of her sons, son Mac, they hid outside of the home guard's home, waiting for him to leave for the day. And once he was outside, they shot him dead from his horse. So then Jenny and Mac drug his body into the woods, and there is where Jenny cut the head of the home guard off, placed it in a burlap sack, and carried it home. Jenny then boiled the head, making lye soap, and then she scrubbed the skull clean and used it as a soap dish. So this is where it starts getting super interesting, guys. So the Brooks boys then set out over the next several years, hunting down the remaining home guard members. They took one out, and then they hid down in Texas and Oklahoma until the heat died down before returning again to go back after some more. Okay, so her boys became known as the Brooks Gang, and their acts eventually led to over 40 years of feuds with other families across the South and the West. Jenny Brooks remarried in 1878 to a man named Jacob Johnston. Jacob's first wife had passed in 1877. Jacob's family strongly objected to the marriage, leading to the Brooks Riddle feud, one of the many documented feuds the Brooks gang is known to be involved with. Particularly, which one was it? The Brooks McFarland feud, and that one was actually in Oklahoma. So eventually, the gunslinger lifestyle of the Brooks boys led them all to an early grave. Only Jenny's youngest son, Henry, survived the decades of feuding. He returned to Alabama to care for a now aging Jenny. He still died from gunfire back home in Alabama. Henry he turned to moonshining. One day, he still was surrounded by a posse under the leadership of Sheriff John Robertson. And even though he was outnumbered, Henry opened fire and then was then killed by 12 gunshot wounds. At the end of it all, Miss Jenny Johnston outlived all of her sons, and the Brooks gang killed all the members of the home guard except one. By this time, she was known in the community as Aunt Jenny, serving as an herb doctor and a midwife. Aunt Jenny Johnston lived to the age of 98 years old. She often told people how proud she was of her sons, even quoted as saying, "They died like men. My sons died with their boots on." Aunt Jenny passed March the 29th of 1924 on her deathbed. The attending preacher that was there asked if there was anything else that he could do for her. And her only request was that I want to wash my hands. She was brought a pan of water and the soap dish she had made back in 1864. She then one last time washed her hands and the home guard skull. Aunt Jenny then dried her hands, closed her eyes, and passed away. Aunt Jenny was known to walk with a cane. So she had a cane, and in her cane she had a notch carved for each one of the home guards that they had killed. It said that Miss Jenny's ghost still haunts the area. So there are several reports of her being seen down here. She people to get off our property because her home site's not far from this location. Let's see here. Now, and the reason they say she's still out here is because her cane is missing one notch. because they were never able to complete their oath, which was taking out the last remaining home guard. The home was rebuilt again, but then burned back in 2010. Nobody was ever caught, according to what I found. But I don't know how true that was. Her headstone on her grave have been destroyed many times. So that's when the family or her descendants got fed up with having to replace it. So now it's covered by a full-length stone. So, yeah, pretty interesting stuff there. I hope I didn't bore you guys too much with that. I was kind of reading my notes as I was going through that, but I'll take you over here and let you guys see the Aunt Jenny's grave. So hang on just a minute here. She hasn't actually heard the story. She's heard me talk about it because this is something that really, really intrigued me here. Was the story of her, and she does have some descendants in the area, and they're welcome to comment on this because it's just history, guys. It's this woman made an oath and stood by what she meant what she. So there's several other stories about her, but that was the one that intrigued me the most. So anyway, what do you guys think? That's a pretty interesting story, I believe, and it's just cool, this local folklore and stuff, and getting to see some of the grave sites down here. And I heard the story back when I first moved out to Alabama. I can't remember who it was that told me about it, but I've always wanted to kind of check it out. And it's kind of cool that I was actually able to get down here and see about it. And yeah, hearing all the stories and then actually being close to her gravesite is kind of gives you some chills a little bit. But if you come down here, guys, respect the area. There have been reports of people tearing up things, and as you can see in the video, Mr. Henry Brooks' headstone has been damaged, it looks like. So just I know the locals wouldn't appreciate it. Alright, guys, well, we're going to load up and get out of here and say goodbye to Miss Jenny and get back towards the house. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this little adventure. I hate that it rained the whole time we were down here, but it added to the ambience of the area. So like I said, when we rolled in here, it started raining and the fog come up and it was just like, whoo, but yeah, sure is peaceful out here, I'll give it that. Anyway, like, share, subscribe if you like this kind of stuff. I'm hoping to maybe dig up some more if I can in the future. Yeah. Kind of don't want to leave, honestly. Anyway, guys, until the next one, you take care.